Mousetrap. This is the only active coaster to be named Mousetrap in the world, and it is not Wonderland's Wild Mouse. Instead, it is a Pinfari Zyklon that works as both a solid family coaster and an enjoyable thrill coaster. Find out why in this review. Pinfari Zyklons come in a variety of models, including ones with loops, and 113 permanent installations have been reported around the world. These are meant to be portable coasters, and many have easily been sold and relocated. These coasters look and feel similar to Galaxy coasters from SDSC, as well as Schwarzkopf Wildcats or Interpark Cyclone coasters. Despite the common and popular layout, many parks around the world want coasters like these because they offer a decent side drop, especially compared to other smaller kiddie coasters. Having only ridden an Interpark Zyklon as a similar coaster, I was not expecting too much when it came to this ride, as that offered a very solid first drop, but not a lot of forces for the rest of the ride. But this version did a lot more than I was expecting, as it delivered a few times around the layout. Wonderland is the oldest park in Texas with a permanent operating coaster, and has a lovely collection of 4 solid coasters that all rank in my top 25 coasters in Texas, though Hornet might be more nostalgia and personal love for that coaster than that it truly deserves such a high ranking just off its elements alone, but it's a really nice coaster. Wonderland has a nice collection of flat rides, including many prototype rides from Hopkins, but many of their more unique flat rides are currently experiencing prolonged closures, with the park stating that they are awaiting parts. The feel and energy of this park is great, as it radiates a classic family park, something you can't really find elsewhere in the state of Texas. And with its mixture of appeals and location, I'd say Mousetrap is firmly at the heart of this family park. Mousetrap, like the largest coaster at Wonderland, Texas Tornado, has a rider minimum that is strictly enforced. On the 3-car trains that seat 12 people, a rider minimum of 10 is required for this ride to operate. So, on the slower day that I visited, many guests were waiting in line for this coaster, begging people passing by to join them to meet this requirement. On the previous evening that I was at the park, however, this coaster was almost always able to meet this minimum requirement with only a little bit of waiting. If you are a single rider, fear not, as they will pair you up with someone, likely a kid, so that you shouldn't have trouble riding. The ride attendants seem to strongly prefer having the coaster operate at true maximum capacity, or a full train with 12 people. This small difference in people should not make an overall large difference in operations or having to wait to fill the train, but is problematic because the shared seatbelts on each car are both tight and different lengths. This means even when I was paired up with a kid, I was too big to ride in the very first row to get a front row POV, and was asked to move to a different seat with a more forgiving seatbelt. Other couples, especially if 2 adults were trying to fit into a car, had to switch seats, or one adult had to not ride altogether. This is both embarrassing for some normal-sized adults to feel too big for a car, but can also bring the rider minimum down below the required threshold while significantly delaying dispatches. I can understand that the coaster needs to be full to run, but I cannot understand why slightly larger seatbelts can't be used for adults. The station attendants did have to remind all guests to not put their hands up during the ride, so these tight seatbelts may have to do with the general lack of proper clearance around the coaster track itself that could create problems if one was to reach their hands up or in the wrong direction. But that doesn't seem like it should matter that much that the seatbelts cannot be modified ever so slightly. After leaving the station, you slowly go around a pre-lift turn that doesn't do much in terms of forces, though you might get minor laterals towards the back. After a straight lift hill, you go slowly around a turn at the top to get a nice view of the surrounding park. Then, there's the highlight of this coaster, its main drop. Others have stated that you need to ride this coaster in the very back row, something not super easy with how everyone jams around during the loading process, and people will pick the back row over the other rows on this coaster. However, the back row just offered a bit more ejector airtime. All rows on this coaster got a really nice drop feeling, as the slope isn't too great, but just perfect enough to give a nice, long, solid drop. For those more scared to ride because of drops, this might be one you want to stay away from, but many kids and families were riding it as it seems not too bad from looking at it. After the drop, you pop up into a turnaround. Nothing great with this turnaround here, but you keep enough speed that it doesn't feel super slow. The second drop is also pretty good. Not exactly as good as the first, but it once again offers a solid drop feeling. For those scared, this is the last big drop on the ride. Next comes a large helix that also acts as a turnaround. On Galaxy Coaster that I rode at the Houston Rodeo, these helixes were dud. But this is forceful enough that it is really enjoyable. Afterwards, there is this bunny hill, which has slightly awkward profiling, enough to give everyone a little pop of airtime as you're jostled about, which is a nice bit of character for a coaster like this to have. Then, you go through one more helix that still has solid forces to it before heading towards the brake run. There's one final awkward transition that will give everyone a nice jolt, since you take it with considerable speed before the brakes. The final turn is taken rather slowly before going down and braking in the station. Overall, how good is Mousetrap? This is a simple coaster that executes most of its elements very well, making it a classic and enjoyable mid-size coaster. I rank it just behind Montu at Busch Gardens Tampa Bay. Although I can enjoy that B&M invert, I'm just not a huge fan of B&M inverts in general, so I will rank Montu lower than most other coaster enthusiasts. And I rank Mousetrap just ahead of Diamondback at Frontier City. The launches and drops offer enjoyable airtime on Diamondback, and the inversion is forceful without being too painful. Diamondback is a solid and enjoyable ride, it just doesn't do more for me. How much do you enjoy the drops on Mousetrap? Which of these types of coasters have you found the most enjoyable? Let me know, and as always, Cupcake Crap.